All right, now let's focus on the front end. Earlier we talked about this config.json and environment files. Before we deploy this application to production, we should make a few changes such that if this application is in the production environment, it's going to use a different backend. That is the backend that we're currently hosting on Heroku. So basically, we want to get rid of this config.json. So here in the root of the project, let's add a new file, .env.production. In this file, we should add a variable called React App API URL. We set this to the address of our backend app on Heroku. So copy this and paste it here, and then remove /genres from the end. So make sure this address ends with /API. Save. Now we need to set the same variable for our development environment. So copy this line and go to env.development. Let's delete all these, paste that here. In our development environment, we want to use a different address. That is what we currently have in config.json. So let's copy this address and then paste it here. Beautiful. So there are a few places where we have used this config.json. Here in the services folder, let's take a look at auth service. On the top, we're importing API URL from config.json. Let's delete this line and then change API endpoint to just /auth. We don't want that prefix. We're going to make the same change in other services. So I'm going to pause the recording. So as you can see, I've modified all these services except HTTP and log service. In all these services, wherever we had a reference to config.json, I removed that reference. Now we should go to our HTTP service and configure a default property. So on the top, axios.defaults.base URL. We set this to process.env.react.app.API URL. So as you learned earlier, this will be replaced with a different value depending on how we are building this application, for development or for production. Save the changes. Now, before we deploy this application, we can create a production build, serve it locally, and make sure it's connecting to the backend that we have on Heroku. So here in the terminal, npm run build. Okay, our production build is ready. Now let's serve it. So serve-s build. So here in the browser, this is what we get. There are no movies in the database. Currently, we have a UX issue. So if the database is empty, we don't get that button to add a new movie. So let's go to movies.jsx. Here in the render method, we should remove what we have on line 101. If count equals 0, we don't want to return this message. Save the changes. We need to build the application one more time. So npm run build. And then serve it one more time. So back in the browser, these genres you see here are the ones that I currently have in my MongoDB database on mLab. Beautiful. So our video application is ready to be deployed to Heroku, and that's what we will do next.